Hey everyone, welcome back to another hardware news recap for the week. We are finally past most of the AMD product reviews. There's still more to come, but hopefully AMD month will be over soon and we can start focusing on a wider range of things in the space. It was a lot all at once. This week though, we still have some follow-up coverage like AMD AGESA BIOS bugs that have been outed in the new ABA version of AGESA 1003. Follow-up on the JayzTwoCents versus me charity overclocking battle we did. It's basically a show match we did for an 8-hour stream on our end, 20-hour stream on EVGA's end, AMD Arcturus, and a couple of other news items. Before that, this video is brought to you by us and the Gamers Nexus Toolkit on store.gamersnexus.net. Our brand new toolkit just launched and contains 10 custom-made drivers for video card disassembly, repasting, and teardowns. The 8 core tools are made of high-quality chromium vanadium alloy steel that's built for long service life and resistance to wear during use. The other 2 tools are carbon steel hex heads that were custom ground down for capacitor clearance on video cards. All the tools are easily mounted to a pegboard or stored in the GN-made tool bag for easy transport. Learn more at the link in the description below. So the update on that overclocking battle, if you missed or didn't watch the entirety of the 8-hour stream, we don't blame you. But more or less what happened was in the first segment of the stream, we did a masterclass with Kingpin, Vince Lucido from EVGA, who is, he has his name on the Kingpin card, so that's who he is. And he showed us basics like setting the card up, how he would recommend installing an LN2 pot, installing the heater for the memory, which is actually critical to operation, stuff like that. And then once we got past that phase, Jay and I each picked a card to run. There were 4 of them. We were told, although we're not sure if this is entirely true, we were told that there was 1 dud, 1 really good card, and then 2 that were about equal. And long story short, we ended up with a back and forth leapfrog battle for the 8-hour period. So I placed the first score. It held as the top score for probably a couple hours. Jay ended up beating that one, and he beat it right when I was in the middle of having a lot of issues with my system. And then I ended up beating his about 13 seconds later, though, because I finally had a test pass complete successfully. We were using Port Royal for the whole time. So the scores ended up being about 12,343 points, I think, for mine. Jay's was 12,255. And then the best part is that we then said, you know what, we're done. Jay and I were going to step back. And Vince, why don't you show us how it's done? So then Kingpin steps in, and in probably under 10 minutes, he beat both of our scores and said, okay, let's go get dinner. So it shows you the kind of, this isn't as easy as just pouring LN2. And pouring LN2 is actually the most important skill as he demonstrated in that segment. So if you want to see that part, it's probably in the last 20 minutes of the stream or so. And we'd recommend watching it just because you can see a real pro do what we did in 8 hours, except he does it in 10 or 15 minutes max. So yeah, that was the stream. Now, as far as the charity end of it, EVGA was celebrating its 20th anniversary. They were raising money for St. Jude's. And Jay's local. Kingpin had to visit anyway. We flew out there. So it was a pretty fun event. They streamed for 20 hours. We were on for 8. And I believe they raised it was approaching $12,000 at the end of it, all said and done. So it was maybe 11,600, something like that, which is really damn good. So really happy to see the success of their stream. I think they said the most money they've ever raised. They do this for St. Jude's, I think, every year. And it's the most they've ever raised in one go. We contributed $1,000 to that, and to try and match some of our community's donations during that stream. So really fun. Thanks for supporting, and good cause and all of that. And also we got to see a fun overclocking battle. Now this isn't done. Jay and I still have a lot to go head to head with, and we're both looking forward to getting back to some of the crazier non-LN2 stuff. Crazier being like insane and kind of convoluted chilled or other water cooling setups to try and best each other in overclocking. So a lot more to come, but thank you for watching, and there's your very quick recap. If you want an on-the-scenes recap, Jay posted a video, of course, JayzTwoCents on YouTube, and he goes through the whole process in about a 15-minute video or so and covers it pretty well. So there's your recap on the stream. Next up, AMD AGESA BIOS bugs. Can't go more than a week without talking about BIOS updates right now. Following AMD's Zen 2 difficulties with things like random number instructions for Destiny 2 Linux distributions, AMD shipped a BIOS update It was AGESA version 1003 ABA. Previously, there was 1003 AB, sometimes called Combo, and then there was 1003A and 1002. So 1003 ABA, 1003 ABA has been, to our understanding, retracted at this point, and 1003 AB is still the current recommended BIOS update. If you're having issues with Destiny 2, there will be a fix. It is in the pipeline, but the 1003 ABA version of the code had some new bugs that ASUS noted it encountered. Shamino from ASUS specifically noted this, so they ended up backing off of that firmware release for now. So there are updates in the pipe. It should fix the Destiny 2 issues, should fix some of the other Linux distribution issues, but it's too buggy otherwise. And as a quick refresher on this and how it works, basically AMD provides a prepackaged set of code to the motherboard manufacturers called AGESA, and that code is binary. So they deliver it to the motherboard makers as binary code, and then the motherboard makers implement it into their existing UEFI package or their BIOS package. And one thing that is not clear for the motherboard manufacturers is what part of the code does what, because it's all just binary to our understanding. So digging out things like PCIe Gen 4 as a toggle switch and retoggling it back on isn't as easy as just finding the commented line of code and changing it. They have to actually dig through and figure out which part of the code relates to that feature to then try and sort of hack it back on. Although it's a permitted hack, it's not necessarily a quick one to do. There's trial and error involved in finding it. And obviously some of these vendors have already found it because they've shipped updates that should work with Gen 4 on the older boards. But AMD is trying to turn that off going forward. Anyway, though, AGESA 1003 ABA has been retracted, and they will reship it once it's fixed. Next up, a rumor. Intel and AMD both readying CPU launches for end of year. This part is mostly known at this point, but there are some rumors in here as well. So there's a new report from DigiTimes that suggests that the HCC, or high core count CPU war, will heat up this fall. The x86 space is as competitive as it's been in years, with AMD having just released its Ryzen 3000 desktop parts, the R5 3600, getting a particularly good review from us. We also know AMD still has the 16-core, 32-thread R9 3950X waiting in the wings, with a committed September launch for that one. It's unlikely the AM4 socket will support anything beyond 16 cores, so that leaves the TR socket and the Zen 2-based Threadripper that's due out at some point, something AMD has been tight-lipped about. According to DigiTimes, citing motherboard vendors as sources, AMD is making moves to ready Threadripper 3000 parts for an October launch. AMD will have to do something significant with next-gen Threadripper, particularly at the bottom of the stack, because the R9 3900X already puts tremendous pressure on the Threadripper 2950X. The R9 3950X will only exacerbate that, and could even punch above its weight class and threaten the Threadripper 2970WX. Early speculation suggests that Threadripper 3000 could top out at 64 cores and 128 threads, with support for 8-channel memory, but none of this has been confirmed yet. Intel's next move, though, is less clear than AMD's. AMD's pretty much revealed their whole hand at this point. For Intel, bringing Cascade Lake to X299 in the form of Cascade Lake X would be a sensible move. That's one scenario. There's talk of X399 Glacier Falls chipsets. Ignoring those fake Comet Lake slides, there's also a Comet Lake CPU at some point. Intel could begin rolling out certain Comet Lake models for Z390, which is essentially a refreshed Coffee Lake refresh. And we're also aware of motherboards codenamed Z490 at present, but we don't know if that's going to be the final name for the chipset. We know that motherboard manufacturers have what they are calling Z490 boards. Whether it ships that way is to be determined. We also know that X299, the current chipset, is what will be used for the next immediate HEDT launch for Intel. So that X499 chipset, as we already talked about previously, that was seen at Computex, that was a fake. It was temporary naming. It was a 299 chipset. It was an X299G brand motherboard from Gigabyte, and that G isn't an Intel thing, that's a Gigabyte thing. So X299 will persist for the immediate launch. X399 maybe for something after that, we don't know. And then Z490 is a thing that's out there. Whether or not that's the final chipset name, we're not certain either. So anyway, Intel's move is a lot less clear. Speaking of Intel CEO cited, quote, aggressive goals as one of the leading causes to blame for its CPU shortage that had been going on for about 2 years. Intel CEO Robert Swan was recently at the Fortune Brainstorm Tech Conference, where he discussed a number of topics, including what he believes to be a key factor in Intel's pervasive CPU shortage. Swan describes the delay as, quote, somewhat a function of what we've been able to do in the past, which is in essence defying the odds. Swan further explains by saying, quote, at a time when it was getting harder and harder, we set a more and more aggressive goal. From that, it just took us longer. This is congruent with what Intel has stated in the past about its 10 nanometer hurdle, specifically by pursuing a node shrink with an overly aggressive transistor density. Intel's obviously encountered some problems. Intel's 10 nanometer delay has led to the company having to ease its ironclad grip on many market segments where AMD has been able to make notable progress, including in notebooks, Chromebooks, and the enthusiast segment, obviously. Next news item is about a rebrand, another one. This one's Toshiba memory. And Toshiba memory is going to become Kioxia, we're not sure, Kioxia maybe. So Toshiba had to spin off its lucrative memory business when it was facing some issues with bankruptcy, just small issues with being bankrupt. And this was sold as Toshiba Memory Corporation for $18 billion to Bain Capital. The plan was to eventually go for an IPO, and it was still, to our knowledge, going to be Toshiba Memory, but that's changed. So ahead of making a public offering, the name change in order is supposed to move from the recognizable Toshiba Memory to the new, we're going to go with Kioxia, effective this October, and feel free to correct us on the pronunciation. Toshiba explains that this new name is a combination of the Japanese word kyoku, meaning memory, and the Greek word axia, meaning value. Maybe Kioxia? I don't know. Is it clear that this is a bad name to choose? Name changes aside, there doesn't appear to be any shift in the way Toshiba is intending to approach its memory business, or former Toshiba anyway. Toshiba is still recovering from power outages that left it with a severe NAND deficit and several exabytes of NAND affected, discussed in our previous news video. And now I guess we'll wait and see what happens with this rebrand and spinoff. AMD's Arcturus could be a Vega-based workstation GPU. This is another sort of rumor item. So Phoronix managed to grab some lines of code in the Linux drivers that pertain to AMD's Arcturus GPUs. And this suggested that Arcturus could be a Vega-based workstation card. Phoronix specifically spotted GFX 908 device IDs, which would be, in theory, relatable to the GFX 906 and 907 device IDs of previous AMD Vega 20 GPUs. So, furthermore, AMD's roadmap has indicated that the post-Navi graphics cards will be fabricated at 7 nanometer plus. So Arcturus could be a refreshed Vega 20, presumably with HBM2 and features like ECC. The Linux code shows lines for 3 device IDs, and the lineup could consist of at least 3 models. So it's possible we might hear more about Arcturus at SIGGRAPH 2019 or at Hot Chips, but that's all we know for now. And then finally, NZXT is expanding its BLD or build service for pre-built PCs. And the reason we're including this news item is specifically because the expansion is adding a couple of Ryzen parts. Not something you see from, it's getting more popular, but not something you see from all of the SIs just yet. This is something where AMD spoke with us at CES in January of this year, 2019, about how its most immediate target was to get in front of SIs, system integrators, and get placement in more of the pre-built systems that get shipped, because AMD had already felt pretty confident in the enthusiast market at this point and was missing out on the pre-built market for obviously a very wide audience, whether or not you think it's worth the money. A lot of people do buy pre-built. So NZXT's upgrades here. The company is now offering machines through BLD service that are branded as being gaming and streaming machines, a unique selling point and one that's valid for sure. This will be initially offered in 3 configurations, all shipping the day after ordering. Interestingly, NZXT is using AMD's 2nd gen Ryzen on all of the pre-builds, and they come with the H500 chassis, NZXT's 2-year warranty on purchases, things like that. For gamers targeting 1080p gaming, NZXT's starter build includes a Ryzen 5 2600 and an NVIDIA GTX 1660. The build also comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 500 gigabyte M2 SSD. This is NZXT's starter PC, they call it, and it'll go for $900. For $1,000, the user upgrade is GTX 1660 Ti and a 1 terabyte SSD. for $1,500. NZXT is offering a Ryzen 7 2700X, an RTX 2070, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a 650 watt PSU with a 1 terabyte SSD. All of the builds use AMD's bundled Wraith coolers, as well as MSI's Tomahawk B450 motherboard. So that'll be, it's interesting. It's interesting because the 2000 series is actually extremely competitive right now, especially with AMD's newest launches. So from that perspective, it's a good time to offer 2000 series systems. We're not sure how long those CPUs will be around. We don't know if they're still being made or not at the moment, or how many are in inventory, but apparently there's enough for NZXT and other companies to still offer them. So anyway, that's the news for the week. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more as always. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly by buying things like our Teardown Toolkit or our mod mats, and you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus if you'd like to support there as well. I'll see you all next time.